Well, that's in many ways a critical question. One of the issues is when you say global, what do you mean by global? Because it turns out that if we walk around and talk to people and say, what do you mean by global? They mean many different things. Recently we did an exercise such as that, and we found a set of meanings were relatively dominant. And some of them surprising. One of them is we said to people, what do you mean by globalization? And in less developed countries, what that meant was, this is what the people from developed countries do, and we are subject to it. If you talk to people in developed countries about what is globalization, they tend to focus on either some set of dynamics that are going on, such as trade, or communication, or meanings, or World Cup, or something which takes the enormous complexity of the things that are happening global and brings it down to, or not brings it down, but organizes it within a set of references that allow them to be comfortable. Let me just illustrate what we mean by this. For example, we went to a group of students and we said to them, tell me what you think is a good idea of globalization. And they said some remarkable things. They said, for example, it's the clothes you wear. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, look at the label. So you look at the label and one shirt says Vietnam and another shirt says Peru and another shirt says China. And they say that's globalization. You talk to others and you say, what is globalization? And they say, well, globalization is this terrible refugee crisis in Europe or whatever. The takeaway from this, I think, is that globalization means what people need it to mean. When we turn to higher education and we say, what is globalization about? We can then invent a set of references, which I call lenses. And what I mean by a lens is literally the thing that you put in front of your eye to focus on something. Now, the thing about a lens is that it allows you to see some things better at the expense of other things. So no lens is omnipotent. No lens sees everything at one time. What's important about globalization is to encourage people to understand the lens or the lenses that they are using to view the world. Let me illustrate one more in the higher education context. Recently, when we talked to people about what is significant about higher education in the world, and the answer is cross-border education. Well, what do you mean by cross-border education? Cross-border education has to do with the number of students and or faculty which are moving between institutions in the globe. Now, one of the reasons this is interesting is because over the last 10 or 15 years, it has expanded so dramatically. So currently, there are something like 4.5 million cross-border students in the world. That's interesting enough in and of itself, but I talked with some people in New York recently from the International Organization for Education, and they think that by the end of the decade, by 2020, wrong decade, by 2020, that number could be as high as 7 billion. So for many, many people in higher education, globalization means the enormous degree to which all of higher education is becoming cross-border in some sense.